Each episode of Shining City will introduce you to thought leaders, visionaries who are pushing beyond the limits of commonly accepted wisdom to redefine the future. Today we'll meet Lenny Guarente from MIT's Aging Lab. While many scientists are devoting their lives to curing the diseases of aging, cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, Dr. Guarente thinks it may be easier and more effective to simply keep people from aging in the first place. Dr. Guarente and his colleagues are combining anti-aging theories in new ways and formulating new drugs that could allow people to age healthfully well beyond our current lifespan. We sat down with Professor Guarente to discuss the idea of a genetic fountain of youth and ask him what he does to live longer. You may be surprised by his advice.
Well, living things age because in the absence of something to prevent aging, it happens because things get more disordered. That's the law of nature. That's the way it is.
What genes influence longevity?
Well, we started this work about 20 years ago, and we found a set of genes that were quite interesting that are called sirtuins that we know have the effect in yeast of slowing down the aging process. And it's turned out in the past decade or so that these genes are present in all living organisms and seem to do the same thing in all systems. They slow down aging.
Are these the genes that we hear about being influenced by red wine?
Yes, I think that these genes are at the basis of two things that we hear about a lot in the media. The first is red wine and the benefits that red wine have to health because of a compound in red wine called resveratrol. So that's one thing. And the other thing is something called calorie restriction, where we know a low-calorie diet will make animals live longer. And we think in both of these cases, the heart of the matter is these genes called sirtuins that are activated either by resveratrol, in the case of the red wine, or a low-calorie diet. And when these genes get activated, they slow down the aging process.
Tell us about some of the other applications for these drugs. Would it, for example, help with Alzheimer's?
I think the most important aspect of this work that's emerged only in the past 5 years or so is that aging itself is intimately linked to diseases of aging. And by diseases of aging, I mean late onset diseases that affect us all if we live to be old enough. And that includes diabetes and Alzheimer's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases, Parkinson's. It includes cancer. It includes osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, all the biggies. And so the idea is, since aging is triggering these diseases, if you had a drug that could target aging itself, you would be able to mitigate all these diseases and treat them all at once.
You're talking about preventing the disease by postponing aging. You're not talking about solving a particular disease, just postponing the time when it might happen.
I think there is a potential of holding these diseases at bay to the point where you can say that they're no longer an issue.
So tell us what you do personally to slow down the aging process.
What we need to do ourselves is to try to stay in reasonable shape. And by that, I encourage people to think of what is the perfect body weight for them. Okay, and for most of us, that sort of brings us back to a different period in our lives. Okay, and imagine getting to that weight or as close as you can and sticking to it.
So what should we be taking?
Aspirin at the age of 50. Keep a close eye on cholesterol and consider statin drugs if the cholesterol is anywhere near the limit of what it should be. And the last thing I think is probably underappreciated, and that is attitude. I think attitude has a big influence on our health, and I myself try to avoid extremes. For example, not get too anxious, okay, but to not be a couch potato either, but somewhere in the middle, I think. And I think for many things, that's the kind of balance is the place you want to be.
So you're not saying we're just going to be able to walk into the doctor's office and say, I'd like to be 100. May I please have Sertris?
That's right. Well, you can do that, but...
But they aren't going to give you the Sertris drugs?
You're not going to get the Sertris drugs that way. But you might get them in 5 years as a treatment for diabetes. And then, you know, I think it's going to be, if this goes the way I think it will be widely known that these drugs have broad benefits. So I think there'll be a lot of off-label use of such drugs. So I think that's, to my mind, a likely scenario for how the future is going to go here.